I'd like to call this meeting of the Mayor and City Council, June 4th, 2018 to order. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by me and remain standing for the invocation by Mr. Triplett.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we love you and we come to you tonight, and Lord, we just thank you for all the many blessings that you've given us. Father, we thank you for our city. God, we thank you for our community. We thank you for all the people, each family that makes it up, Lord. And Lord, we thank you for your blessings, your prosperity that you've given our community. God, as we come together tonight, Lord, we lift up the mayor, the city council. Father, we ask you to grant them wisdom and discernment as they debate the city's business. We pray, God, that everything that is said, done, and decided, God, would be glorify you and acceptable in your sight. Lord, we ask these things in your name. Amen.
At this time, we go into citizens' comments. Anybody like to address the council, please come to the front. We're allowing 3 minutes for your opinions. Clock will start after you state your name and address.
Name is Dr. Brent Harris, 230 South Lakeshore Drive. Quick overview on Bankhead Highway. This is regarding the Bankhead Corridor Improvement Project you guys are talking about doing the road diet on. A little history of Bankhead Corridor. It used to start with 26 to 24,000 cars average per day. Over the last period of years, after the bypass was installed, it dropped down to approximately 20,000 and 19.7 on different places. I've been in contact with Leidos Corporation, which is a professional engineering company, as well as Rebecca Crow of the DOT and the Federal Highway Administration. Their debate is to do a 5 to 3 lane road diet on Bankhead Corridor. Most of the studies have involved a 4 to 3 lane conversion, and there's limited data on a 5 to 3 lane conversion. So looking at the most closest one I found researching road diets across the United States is located in East Boulevard in Charlotte, North Carolina. They did the exact same road diet. In 2009, the average daily traffic counts were 17,000, 20,000, 22,000, and 18,000. Those dropped to 26 in 2016, so 7 years later. They have 14,000, 18,000, 17,000, and 15,000 for an average decrease of 15 to 20%. That's 15 to 20% less cars traveling on that highway in East Boulevard, Charlotte, North Carolina, than there was prior to that road diet being implemented. So I guess a big question for the City Council is, what is the goal of this project? If it's simply for a road diet and adding bicycle lanes, I think it's an absolutely horrible idea. The purpose of the Bankhead Corridor is a main arterial transport system coming into Carrollton, 20,000 cars a day. That is the primary goal of that corridor. It is a major business corridor. I own property along that corridor. My business is located on that corridor. I've talked to multiple other business owners along that entire corridor, and I haven't found a single business owner that really is adamant about this project. Most people don't know anything about it right now. And so I think the first goal is to figure out what exactly is the goal. Comparatively down in the square, so remember Bankhead has 20,000 average daily car counts. The square, east and west of the square, is 13,000 and 14,000 respectively. So if the Bankhead corridor drops by, according to like the East Boulevard in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're looking at 20,000 dropping down to 16,000 and 19.7 dropping down to 15,000. That's a decrease of 25% along the corridor. And the big thing is the FHWA, the DOT, recommends not implementing this with less than 750 average daily car count. So anything above that, they should not be doing this. And the corridor has much greater than that. So I'm completely opposed to this. Open up to you guys, gentlemen's comments. Any question and answer back and forth to me. Thank you.
You're saying 19 and 7? Is that you mean, is that what? I don't know.
So the average car counts on Bankhead, so this is at Corporate Drive and Bankhead Highway, is in 1990, it was 23,000 cars per day. This is before the bypass was improved. And the entire Bankhead corridor, the commercialization of Bankhead corridor, was designed around a mid-20,000 ADT, or average daily traffic count. So all the businesses along that corridor, free enterprise-wise, developed that corridor to support a 25,000 average daily car count. We are currently sitting at that same intersection, 19,700, according to DOT, Georgia. You know, you can pull them up on GeoDot, the car counts. It's available to anybody that searches the internet. We're at 19.7, so that's a 14% decrease. So we've already lost 14% from the 90s along Bankhead corridor. Everybody's concerned about the way it looks. The primary driver of any kind of commercialization along a corridor like that, an arterial commuter corridor, is traffic counts. If you talk to any institutional investor, any real estate investor, any guy that's looking for a lease, such as Starbucks, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, the only metric they care about is access, egress and ingress, and car counts. That's it. That's almost the only thing I mean, demographics come into play. But Chick-fil-A won't even look at a site unless it has over 30,000 a day. That's why they're past the bypass, because prior to the bypass, you're up at 30-some thousand. So my point is, if you do this road diet at 20,000, which the federal government, the Federal Highway Administration says you should not do, or you should very carefully consider it, if anything under 17.5. We're at 20,000. They also say you should be very careful of implementing something like this anywhere between the 750 to 875. This is a traffic per hour, so max traffic per hour at intersections. We have intersections on Bankhead that approach 1,000 per hour at peak times. So what I'm saying, the data on this, if anybody did research on road diets, according to the federal government, it's a bad idea to do it on Bankhead Highway. This is a couple hours of research in my time. I mean, maybe 10 hours.
I think you're a doctor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're on the corner of U.S.?
Yeah, U.S. Med Clinic on Cedar Street in Bankhead.
Okay.
Thank you, Brent.
Any other questions? No? Thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, it sounds different in here. Did the corridor committee take this into consideration? If not, will you take this into consideration, what he said?
We did. We actually did.
I know you.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought you were another person.
I'm Erica Studdard, and yes, the corridor committee did look at traffic counts very closely. We looked at the National Association of City Transportation Officials guidelines. It's a 2013 standard. That the road diet that we are proposing for Phase 1 of Bankhead will accommodate up to 25,000 trips per day. And I will tell you, Dr. Harris did send us the standards that he's using. They're a little bit older than NACTO standards. NACTO's, I don't want to say it's more relevant, but it's a little more current. It considers all users. And like I said, we've got plenty of room to expand as far as trips per day go, based off that. One thing, too, I just wanted to note, the streetscape's kind of a piece of the pie. You know, this is really kind of a global kind of review of Bankhead. Bankhead, he's correct, was historically kind of a commercial highway corridor, and it was developed as such. And we've seen it decline over the years. And to stop that decline, I think we have to kind of rethink the approach to Bankhead Highway. And so it's not just streetscape, it's not just grant programs, it's not just economic development incentives, it's not just looking at different types of uses, such as incorporating some residential and trying to bring people back to Bankhead. It's all those put together, and it's one big pie, if that makes sense. And it's not just that one pie slice with the streetscape. Bankhead right now is kind of unattractive and unfriendly to pedestrians, for instance. Those types of things we've got to clean up, but it's all part of a bigger picture. It's not just that one little piece, if that makes sense. And I'm available if you have more questions. We also have our engineer here if y'all have any questions for him.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move ahead. Item number 5, minutes.
You had someone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He was.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Ron
I
Bass.
didn't see you, John.
See y'all. George and West. I'm working with you all on the group on the planning efforts for the Bankhead corridor. I'm not the traffic engineer, but I've worked closely with him, and I'd just like to point out that there are some general brushstroke, do this in general, it kind of works, or this may not work in this kind of area. But when you get down to it, you get down to the nuts and bolts. You go out on the field, you measure the data, you run it through the empirical values and the models, and you see how it responds. And that's how the traffic study has been generated, is to give you real data, run it through there to tell you how the results come out. You can look through the report. The report supports that this road diet is capable of still handling the traffic, even the projected volumes. If you look at Bankhead the past 20 years, the volume's been pretty flat. So there's not been really any growth on that corridor traffic-wise in 20 years. I mean, a little bit, but not much. And yeah, Erica's right that in general, what has been adopted recently is looking at the 3-lane road section for up to 25,000 cars a day. But like I say, we don't want to go by the general guidelines. We want to go by what does the actual measurements and projections produce in an engineering document. So that's what I'd like to clarify.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
I just had a response to both those statements. So I actually have the capacity analysis results sitting right here in front of me, and I'm just going to review them for you for a couple seconds. So the 10-year midday peaks at Bankhead at Corporate Drive, which is in the very middle of the phase 1 they're talking about. We have northbound left lane, it decreases to an F. That's a 56-second delay. And 20-year at a F, level F, it's an 81-second delay. It's currently under a 20-second delay, so you're adding an entire minute at that intersection. All the road diet studies that I look at say anything past a D is pretty much unacceptable. And this is at 10 and 20 years. We have multiple sections right here, F, F, E, F, D, E, F. So I'm just going by the actual 81-page traffic study analysis that the city's already paid for. I think I'm not against, I think people are misunderstanding. I'm not against beautifying Bankhead. By all means, beautify it, put center medians in there, clean up the utilities, improve the signage, clean the sidewalks, and all that kind of stuff. But if you're adding a bunch of things to this which requires additional upkeep and expense, and it's going to degrade or decrease the amount of traffic along Bankhead, if there's any chance of that, we should be talking about alternative options. Because the number one thing that the city council should be involved in is pro-business and business growth and development. Yeah, it's nice to have a corridor which has pedestrian friendly, but there's absolutely no adjacent residential that's going to be using that pedestrian friendly streetscape. It's a pointless thing to do. Your money is much better spent on greenbelt improvements, greenbelt additions, sidewalks and bicycle lanes on more of residential areas. You want to keep the car counts in the business corridor and add the pedestrian friendly stuff outside of that. It's a main arterial thing. It's not like these studies that Erica quoted, they're based on Seattle, Chicago, Atlanta, all these major metros. We're not a major metro. We don't have a main arterial 2 streets over that's feeding the center of the town. These major cities like Seattle, it's corridor after corridor after corridor. So if you do a road diet on one, just like they did in North Carolina, in the Carolinas, in East Boulevard, it's the closest one on the studies. They divert right next door because there's a major intersection or major interstate and another major arterial corridor right next door. So the car counts it's the proof in the numbers. 17,000 dropping to 14,000 over a period of 7 years. That's what will happen here. And then Almond Road, it's already busy enough with cut-throughs. Cedar Street's busy enough with cut-throughs. You start slowing down traffic and going from an A and B level of service, which people are used to out here. Everybody around here, did everybody drive a car tonight? Who drove a car? Everybody around here is used to A and B level service. That's how quickly you transport on the roads, A and B. You're going to drop to E and F, a minute and a minute and a half. That's y'all's traffic study. That's not mine. It's right here. You can add it to the minutes. I don't know where I need to put it. Set it down. There you go. Thank you, guys.
My other question would be, maybe you could remind us why we're doing this road diet.
Let me clarify one thing on the F rating. If you look at the future projections with doing nothing, you're already down to a D or E. I can't remember which one it was. So let's not compare an A or B that we got today to 20 years down the road as a potential F without looking at our level of service 20 years from now if we leave it alone. So,
I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but why do we want the road diet?
I think some of the issues, probably a philosophical difference. I think that we all recognize that Bankhead Highway needs help. I don't think there's anybody in the room that wouldn't say that. Actually, the traffic counts say it. It's declining. It's going the wrong direction. So that's why we're doing it. Because if it's continuing to trend downward, its use as a commercial highway type, I guess, corridor is really, it's basically declining. And so these businesses that are absolutely car dependent based off car trips, they're not interested in Bankhead. And the reason they're not interested in Bankhead is because Highway 27 traffic counts are so high. And so then you have to back to that global review of what do we want to see Bankhead Highway become. That's what we're looking at. It's a basically, you know, you've got to look at what can Bankhead Highway transition to. It's transitioned away from those car count, car dependent type uses. And so we've got to transition it to something. And it's continued to decline over the years. In our committee, we reviewed it a good bit, and there's a lot of assets on Bankhead. And he's absolutely right. There's not any residential currently on Bankhead, but we do want to encourage it. We've had a lot of discussion, for instance, about multifamily over the last probably 2 years, at least since I started working back here with the city, and looking at where we want to put multifamily, where we want to put higher density, because we absolutely want to put more people on Bankhead. And if we can put them living there, then we will see, I think, an increase in folks that are visiting Bankhead and utilizing some of the businesses on Bankhead. So it's just a philosophical difference, I think.
Another issue that we're looking at, or is an opportunity for growth in that area, is a lot of the car count that is on Bankhead are using it not to go to a business. It's a cut-through. They're not going to Bankhead as a destination. We want to create Bankhead as a destination, and by all means, in the long acronym of CCDBC, development is before beautification. What we need to do is see business growth in that area, and we also want to beautify it. But Dr. Harris, you're completely right. We can't just beautify. I think I've said it before. We can't just put azaleas in and hope businesses show up. What we need to do is help those businesses be able to grow, and what we're doing is shifting that landscape over there, not just the physical landscape, but the cultural landscape at the same time.
And we did address the medians. I know that was something that was suggested. We talked about that early on. That was something that we were, quite frankly, concerned that the business owners would really have a problem with. Because then it's like, okay, where do you put the medians? Where do you put the median breaks? And we felt like if we did the road diet, we slowed traffic down to the point where folks could actually see what they're driving on, and Rory's exactly correct. I mean, trying to make it more of a destination versus a cut through. That we would probably have a greater effect than trying to put a couple of medians in, because there's really not a lot of locations to put the medians in without obstructing businesses from making a left-hand turn.
So no medians, just like overlay versus medians. Am I right in saying that? So there won't be any medians?
There won't be any medians in Phase 1. We haven't done any design beyond Phase 1, and we're still in the design phase of Phase 1. So it's not, I mean, we've basically got a concept right now. We did do the traffic study at the very beginning because we knew this would be something that we wanted to address, and before we got too far down the road, that we could basically make sure it would be something that would accommodate cars. Because Dr. Harris is right. We probably all drove here tonight, and we still want to be able to accommodate those cars.
More question? Thank everyone for y'all's input. Anybody else want to address the council? Seeing no one, we'll move ahead now. Item number 5, minutes. Need a motion to approve last month's meeting. Y'all had a chance to read over?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve last month's minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Item number 6, mayor and council announcements. Anybody got anything they'd like to add, say?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would like to address one member of the council up here. Last night I was shopping in a big box, and I ran into him, and it was Councilman Waters. He had a man with him who apparently had been through really hard times. He had broken bones and was just severely mangled. And, you know, I believe that, you know, people like Mr. Waters bring humanity to what we do up here. Some people loathe us, some people love us, a lot of people loathe us. But we're all volunteers basically up here, and I think what he did last night was tremendous, and he wasn't trying to show off. I kind of caught him in the act. I was like, "What are you doing, Jim? Are you all right?" And he told me he found this man on the green belt, and he had did he have a chopped off hand? And he was homeless, and he's homeless, and was living on the green belt.
Appreciate that very much, Gerald. He long story short, he came to Carrollton 2 days ago. I'm not sure all the circumstances, but he went to Tanner to get his arm and his leg checked out. But yeah, he's homeless, and I took him to, not the Hope Center, one of the shelters here in town. I can't think of the name of it this morning, and they found his mother who lives in Atlanta, so he's going to be reunited. So I just got a text from Laddie Carter today, so happy ending to the story, hopefully.
All because of you. So, thank you. And to that, and in that same vein, I would like to thank Peter Meyerhofer and his staff. They came over a couple weeks ago and planted the community garden with me inside the food desert of West Carrollton. Peter and his staff stayed out there many hours, and now I think we have probably Guinness's Book of World Record size squash and zucchini plants that are almost up to my chest. Every time I go over there, it's like a foot taller. So, and the beans are producing, and the melons, everything looks pretty idyllic. It's almost picture perfect. So thank you to everyone who supports that and who helps us fight hunger every day. And Jim, thank you.
Anyone else? I'd like to get Tim to give us an update on the fire station, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, I talked to to Lynn Joyner, and he said it should be open. He actually said 2 weeks, so I've been saying the end of the month just to give him some cushion. And also, and Jim will report some of this when he goes through the budget, we're at $850,000 from the insurance company. We're trying to get them over $1 million, so we're still arguing with them, and I think that's enough money that's worth an argument. But it's nearly complete and should be open soon. I think it looks great.
Anyone else? Item number 8, approval of agenda items for consideration. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I've got quite a few to run through. I'll try to make it fast. Wastewater treatment plant has again won the Platinum Award. That's 11 consecutive years of perfect operation, so congratulations to Tony and Danny. The water plant has won the Gold Award again, which is another year of perfect operation without a blip. And as we say, when they win these awards, there are literally thousands of opportunities to make a mistake. We failed to get the award once because of a burned out light bulb, so that's how easy it is that's how difficult it is to achieve this, so congratulations to them. There is a meeting tomorrow night at 4 p.m. third floor courtroom of the old courthouse to talk about the T-Splosh, and that is a meeting with the county. Currently, our mayor, Jim, Chuck, and Rory are planning to be there, and I will be there. And obviously, any elected, it is an advertised meeting, so any elected official can be there without concern about sunshine. The GMA convention begins June 22nd. The 4th of July parade will be held Monday, July 4th, beginning at 10 a.m., and Libby will be sending an email to all of you to see if you're interested in participating. Our July meeting has been rescheduled to July 9th because of the 4th. That's something we do every year. The courtroom renovations, you can tell, are underway. We expect to have this completely done by the next meeting. So the walls look great. The wainscoting is going to be redone, and new carpet and new chairs, and we're excited about that. The AMP Summer Movie Series for children are on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. in the months of June and July. And then effective July 1st, the Georgia hands-free law becomes effective, where we can't, I think you're not even supposed to touch a cell phone while you're operating a vehicle. So we are making arrangements to make sure that our employees who have to use a cell phone in a city car have the right equipment to do that. So thank you.
Now we'll do number 8, approval of agenda items for consideration. I'd like to add one on the Housing Authority bond issue. And I think I need a motion in a second. I guess I made the motion to add.
Are you going to add it as number 8? Item 8.
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on, item number 1, resolution 09218, UDO amendment. Ms. Studdard. We voted on it. Oh, you want to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda items.
Thank you, sir. I'll keep you straight up here. All in favor? Motion carried. That's no problem. It's been a long day. Now, Ms. Studdard.
The first item on your agenda is a resolution to create the Maple Street Corridor Overlay. This is another project of the Carrollton Corridor Development and Beautification Committee. As you may recall, when the committee was created in 2016, the committee was tasked with looking at several corridors. We chose Bankhead Corridor first, and this will be the second corridor that we're beginning work on. The resolution that you have in front of you is substantially the same language that you will see in the Bankhead Highway or in the Lake Carroll Village Overlay District. There are a few notable differences, and I'm going to go through those just briefly, and then I'll be available for questions afterwards. One of the differences is the Maple Street corridor is currently the vast majority of it from Highway 27 to the college is already zoned C3. If you recall, many of the applications that we used on Bankhead were already kind of C3 standards. So much of the way we would want to see Maple Street redeveloped, it's already zoned C3, but they're very similar in as far as landscaping and building location and parking and uses. Maple Street is different than Bankhead Highway because we do have to contemplate some single-family zoning districts along Maple Street. The district would go from Highway 27 all the way to the Maple Street Commons. There are some R20 zone properties in that particular corridor, and this set of guidelines and ordinance revisions would not apply to those R20 properties. So we're strictly looking at the O&I property that's kind of in front of the college and then the C3 property from McDonald's back to Highway 27. That's one substantial change. Another change that we did make that's a little different than the Lake Carroll Village Overlay District is concerning density. If you recall, we gave a density bump on the Lake Carroll Village Overlay of 15 units per acre. We are certainly trying to encourage and incentivize a developer to come develop residential density on Bankhead. The C3 typically has a 6 units per acre density allowance, and we would actually like to keep it at 6 units per acre. It would have to be in some sort of mixed-use capacity. The one difference being that we want to take a closer look at some of the redevelopment opportunities for some of the structures on Maple Street. And I'll throw one out. Maple Street School, for instance, I think has a lot of cultural significance to the community. And if we could see that redeveloped versus torn down, that would be a really, I think, a neat project, and it would be something that would be an asset for that corridor. The remainder of the standards, the architectural standards, those are very similar to what's already existing in C3. We did clarify some of the display areas. We clarified what was and was not allowed as windows and that sort of thing. The signage is exactly the same as what we have proposed and what was approved on Bankhead Highway. Same thing, we're trying to move it down in scale so that it's, it's basically not as tall. But we do want to allow, we're not requiring monument signs, but we do want to allow for folks to be more creative. So we're not requiring monument signs, however, they would be shorter. If you have any questions about this resolution, I'm not sure if you had a chance to review it, I'm here and available.
Is this going to be like Bankhead where everybody's grandfathered in that's already there, or?
Yes, we basically, we would have an opportunity to implement these standards when someone wants to come in and redevelop something on Maple Street. We would certainly love for folks, like for instance, signage is a good example. If folks would want to proactively come in and maybe take advantage of a potential grant program like we've got it on Bankhead Highway, or like we hope to have on Bankhead Highway starting July 1st, we're going to look at doing the same thing on Maple Street. So unless a property owner willingly wants to come under these standards, or unless they do something that would require them to use these new standards, like a redevelopment project or something like that, then they would be grandfathered in.
Eric, I know you sometimes use inside baseball language. So for the people, the citizens that just happen to come, they probably don't know what R20 means in C3. And for purposes of the minutes, can you take a minute and tell us what R20 is?
Sure.
And C3, and then give us an example of what there is an R20 on Maple and what already is a C3 on Maple.
Okay. The R20 is single-family residential with a 20,000 square foot lot size. R20 properties on Maple Street, the properties that are adjacent to Sunset Hills along Maple Street, those are zoned R20. The ones that are adjacent to Heritage Hills, those are zoned R20. Basically, it's our kind of our largest single-family lot, and typically, I think actually all of Sunset Hills is zoned R20 and Heritage Hills. I'd have to go back and verify that. As far as C3 goes, C3 is a little different than, say, C2, which is highway commercial. C3, we would consider that neighborhood commercial. Back to that village-style development where you may see kind of residential that's kind of a little bit more directly adjacent to the commercial, and so we want to make it a little more compatible. In layman's terms, it's a little less intense. So it's not your highway kind of drive-through type uses. It's really more basically mixed use, retail, professional office space, those types of things. We also have O&I in that district. A good example of O&I would be, she's here, so I'll use her office, but Jill Duncan's insurance office on Maple Street, that's zoned O&I.
And what does O&I stand for?
O&I is office institutional.
Let me just read you the C3 definition, which is going to say what you just said.
Right.
But just the district is intended for permitted but not limited commercial activities, provide for related services to business and professional offices, and provide for protection of adjacent residential areas by maintaining the compatible architectural styles. So basically, a C3, it's going to almost look like a house or when they build the structure, correct? Or so, I mean, it's not going to be just a commercial building
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be built like a residential structure in architecture. It just needs to be compatible and sensitive to the adjacent residential uses. In other words, it wouldn't be a huge commercial shopping center like you might see like a Walmart. It would be something that would be, like a first floor commercial that maybe has a pedestrian connection to the residential that might be behind it, if that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be built in style like a single-family home. It can, the architecture could really look quite commercial. It's really how it relates to the adjacent residential. So, like I said, it's kind of it's less intense, if for lack of a better word. The Planning Commission reviewed these standards in their May meeting, and they did recommend approval. Forgot to mention that earlier. Yes, yes.
After reviewing the document, we found a couple changes that need to be made. I presented those on each spot. The yellow piece of paper that just said allowing the density to increase to 10 units per acre in section 4.02.06A2E. And that really just says a space that's like the school, over 50 years old, and just to allow that increased density in that sort of an area. It just cleans up the language in that. And then in the section about standards for window glazing, we just put in unobstructed visibility on the windows in there, and all windows or all walls other than the front-facing wall should also have 15% glazing. The front wall would need to have 30, which was already written in there. So that's the only change from what was.
And that's on page 11 of your packet.
Thank you, Erica.
Anything else? Any more questions for Erica? Have a motion we adopt?
I'll make a motion we adopt the Maple Street overlay with these previously mentioned changes.
I think the motion is to approve Resolution 09-2018 as presented with the changes reflected on the yellow sheet to Table 4.0101H and Section 4.0206A2B.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Studdard, rezoning 1408 and 1414. Yep. Maple Street previously tabled from April 9th meeting. I thought that was in May's meeting we tabled that in, not April. April?
Yes, the rezoning request at 1408 and 1414 Maple Street, the request is to rezone the property from RT, which is residential townhome, to C3, which is that neighborhood commercial that we just previously discussed. This particular tract would fall within that Maple Street corridor overlay district that has been newly adopted. The Planning Commission reviewed this request in their April meeting. No, their March meeting, I apologize. And the motion passed 4-2.
Is there anyone here to speak for this?
I'm Jimmy Tuggle. I live on Ferndale Road. I'm one of the co-owners of the property. Some of you heard the request back in March. Since that time, the Archdiocese of Atlanta has expressed an interest in the property to put a student center on that property, assuming that it was rezoned C3. That was what we originally wanted to have happen. It just didn't work out initially, but they have expressed a more of an interest now, and it fits in with the overlay and the rest of the neighborhood there. So I would just ask you once again to approve the rezoning.
Any questions? Thank you, Jim. Anyone here to speak against? Seeing no one, is there any more questions from the council? Have a motion we approve or decline?
I make a motion that we approve the rezoning of 1408 and 1414 Maple Street from R2 to C3.
I have a motion. I have a second. I have a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of rezoning 1408 and 1414 Maple Street to C3 from RT, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Studdard, one more time, please, ma'am. Rezoning 516 Willie North Street. I'm sorry.
I believe it's 512. I think that was a mistake on the agenda. I apologize for that. The zoning request that you have before you is at 512 Willie North Street. The property is currently zoned R10, and the request is to rezone it to RM with a special use permit to allow a density of 10.1 units per acre. This particular tract currently has a single-family home on it and a duplex. There's no development associated with this request. The petitioner is simply wanting to subdivide the property, and they're wanting to sell the duplex. This particular request is made so that the lender for the buyer will approve the sale. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their May meeting, and they recommended approval with a vote 7-0, so it was unanimous.
Any questions, gentlemen? Anyone here speak for or against? Seeing no one, I guess, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Brianna Boyd, and I am the buyer's agent for this property. So again, like she said, we're just looking to buy the property, but the house and the duplex are on the same tract of land. So my client is unable to purchase it until the tract is split.
Thank you, ma'am. Any more discussion, guys? Get a motion to approve the zoning?
So moved.
Have a motion to approve. Need a second? Have a second, Mr. Roderick. Thank you, sir. Everyone in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Tim, Tanner Health System Stormwater Project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For a number of years, probably 5, we have been discussing a stormwater project on Dixie Street across from Tanner Hospital. Ms. Duke is posting a drawing on the board. There is a run of stormwater piping that the city owns. You see it highlighted in red. We have planned to replace that piping in conjunction with work that Tanner Medical is performing. That work is underway now. Again, this is existing storm piping. It is rotted away as a lot of corrugated metal piping does. I'm going to try to point at this without without pointing on Libby at the same time. Tanner is planning to develop this site, which is, if you've been down Dixie, you know how much grading is going on there. There's a parking deck going in and several medical office buildings and just a huge amount of work. They plan to expand the greenbelt from its current end at this point at the southern end of their property and run it up along where the sidewalk exists to a point that where it is hoped to continue at some point with a joint city Tanner project. But for now, we have storm pipe in the way. Their contractor is literally going to be working in that corridor and literally laying greenbelt. And so it is virtually impossible for us to hire a different contractor to do this work. So what you have before you is a legal justification, which is allowed by the state of Georgia, for sole sourcing this to the contractor on the site. We had John Bass do an estimate on the cost of the job. I can tell you we started a lot farther apart than the number that we're at this point. I think through our budget meetings through the years, I've been telling you gentlemen, $300,000. We extended the storm piping up toward the railroad for another approximate $25,000. But this is our piping. It's needed replacing, and we didn't want to tear that area up until Tanner tore the area up. And it makes sense to do these two together. We have a written quote from Carl Owens Construction. He is Tanner's contractor for $325,000. Frankly, on this kind of job, we could run into some issues when we get out there. I want to forewarn you of that. Tommy and I will manage this work, and it's something we've done for decades, and we know what we're doing. Carl Owens Construction is an excellent contractor. We've used them on a lot of stormwater work. And I'm asking that you approve this purchase, and we will report to you monthly what actually happens and what we actually spend. And if there are issues we run into that we didn't anticipate, we'll make that very clear to you. But this is the time to do the job, and we would be foolish to let them install that green belt and install all that paving and they're going to bury the power lines. We would be foolish to let them do that and not replace our utilities while we're there. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to address that. I have had our attorney review this method of award, and he has indicated that it is legal and he agrees with it.
Are we going to actually go up Clinic? What's that ambulance drive right there?
We're going to lay all that you see in red, yes, sir.
So to go up behind the parking deck that is there now on the
Yes, sir.
west side of Dixie.
That area itself, that little park actually floods, and this will solve that problem also. But there's a road crossing and all this messy utilities, and you know, it's a full corridor with a lot of utilities in the ground. They're all being replaced. So specifically, what I'm asking you to do is authorize us to award this to Carl Owens Construction at an estimated amount of $325,000. But again, we will do our best to hold that price down, but we're going to have to, if we run into other issues, we're going to have to make changes as we go, and we'll have to make them immediately. If they cut a road open and there's something in the way and elevations don't work, we'll have to make changes on the spot. It's just the nature of the work.
I'd like to make a motion we approve. Have a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Item number 5, Mr. Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 10 budget amendments for the FY 2018 year that we would like to present for your consideration. I will just go through them briefly, give a description of what the dollar amounts are, what they entail, and then maybe entertain the questions after we get through the list. Amendment 18-01 is for $503,097. It's to fund the property purchase
of Bristol Lakes and the Alabama Street properties that you approved earlier in the fiscal year. Amendment 18-02 is in the amount of $61,409. If you recall, we presented this to you about a year ago. It was for the cemetery damage over on Alabama Street due to the vehicle accident. We got the insurance proceeds last fiscal year, but we crossed the fiscal year into the new fiscal year before the work was actually done in October. And so basically that revenue that we received in FY17 was closed into fund balance during the year-end closing. And so basically this is just a housekeeping error item, and you just need to reappropriate that money back out of fund balance because the work was done in the current year. It's just a timing thing. Amendment 18-03 is in the amount of $47,849. This is basically to fund some professional services that we incurred during the fiscal year that was not in the current budget. There were some engineering fees, but there were also some property appraisals and management consulting services that we used over and above what we projected that we would use during the current fiscal year. And so that is what that amendment covers. Amendment 18-04 is in the amount of $38,590. Computer equipment, $32,600 of this was for a computer backup unit that was going bad. We had to replace in January, February, March timeframe. And we had some backup units going bad. In March, if you recall, we had a malware attack on the city computer system. We were shut down in City Hall for two days. There was no permanent damage, but our IT people tell us that had we not had that backup unit, things could have been much, much worse. And so we feel like this was money well spent. Also, the engineering department, we had one of their large printers go down, and we had to make an emergency purchase, and that was $5,990. So those two items make up the $38,590. Amendment number 18-05, part-time salaries in the finance department. This is part-time staff accountant that we use during the year, specifically during audit preparation time. We utilized that position a little more than we thought that we would, but it was a great help. Fixed asset conversions and some other accounting projects that have been a great help to me, and so that makes up that $20,000. Amendment number 18-06 in the amount of $267,146. That is to cover building improvements here at the police department, the courtroom renovation, and also some other building renovations going on here in the police department. Also, motor vehicles, $217,146. As you recall, the police cars were originally budgeted and spliced. But we've been having to manage the cash flow in our SPLOST fund. We still have close to $1 million outstanding from FEMA reimbursements that we have not received yet. We expect that reimbursement just any day now. But as we were preparing this budget amendment, the thought behind this was, let's go ahead and present this budget amendment and fund the police car purchases through the general fund and preserve the SPLOST funds for capital and infrastructure projects going forward. And so that's the idea with that. Amendment number 18-07, building improvements. As Tim said, this relates to the fire department. The tornado damage from last April, or April in 2017. We've received $300,000 in insurance reimbursement. We've got pending payments of just over $464,000. And as Tim said, the negotiations for the remainder are still underway. And so until we got a final amount, we just felt like we need to go ahead and appropriate the whole $1.5 million, or $1.2 million, excuse me, through fund balance. And so that makes up the 1.5. 300,000 insurance reimbursements already received, and then an appropriation of fund balance of $1.2 million. Amendment number 1808. This is total $65,735. This relates also to the fire department for the cost of implementing the recommendations of the fire department audit that was presented earlier in the fiscal year. Budget amendment number 18-09. Infrastructure roads, $216,654. This also relates to SPLOST managing the cash flow. As I just said just a second ago, we're still waiting on that $1 million FEMA reimbursement. That affected how much money cash-wise that we were able to spend through the SPLOST fund. And so we had to divert some SPLOST funding back into the general fund, and it caused our road infrastructure a line item, which was $1 million budget amount, to go over budget by $216,000. Some of that was regular road paving. Some of that was also related to the Maple Presbyterian realignment project. The final amendment, amendment number 18-10, recreation parks and facilities, $150,000. That also relates to the replacement of the rec maintenance building that was destroyed by fire. We got the insurance reimbursement in the prior year. It was closed to fund balance, and the work has been finished during the current fiscal year, and it's just a housekeeping thing where the money needs to be reappropriated. I know that's a lot of amendments, a lot of dollars. Be glad to answer any questions.
Got a quick one. When was the East Carroll Fire Station built, and how much did that cost?
That was 2003, Tim, and I think it was about 1.3 million.
I think it was more than that.
Was it?
But I think it was more like 1.6.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. It is a little larger station, though. It has one extra bay. It's a 3 bay instead of a 2. Jimmy, do you remember the exact number? Okay, he split the difference on us, but okay.
Thank you for your correction.
Well, I know construction prices are a lot higher, so to see this fire station go in at that price and to get those reimbursements up, I appreciate the city staff for working on trying to make it as cost efficient as possible.
Well, I want to make a couple of points because I know budgets can be misunderstood by people, and I want to be real clear why we're doing what we do. First, this administration basically took office in January of 16. Prior to that, you weren't even presented an audit. And on those audits, every time some budget went over, this city took a hit on the audit, but it wasn't discussed, and we don't do business that way. We want a clean set of books, and we want you to know what pot you spent that money out of. So, and if again, a building burns down and the insurance pays for it, we still have to amend the budget, even though that may be no cost to us. We have to amend the budget to say we spent that money out and we took that money in. So that's some of the changes Jim is talking about. And then we did the box culverts on Ben Scott and the box culverts on, or the reset of the culverts and head walls on Almond. And there's about $1 million of FEMA money owed us. That got delayed because of some other storms across the country. And we are owed that money, and I'm being told it's any week now in a few weeks. So, but we're coming up on the end of the fiscal year. This is the only meeting we can do to make these amendments, or we will take a hit on our audit because those books are going to close June 30th, and you're not going to meet again till July. So it's better for us. We have ample reserves in the general fund. It's better for us to go ahead and pay this out of the general fund, and then we'll just have more SPLOST money in the long run, and we do capital with any of it. So I hope that's clear, and if it's not, please ask us, and we'll try to make it clear.
Well, that helps a little bit. Jim, I was adding up the numbers. It looks like, and I'm probably off, about $2.8 million transfer of money, basically of debits and credits. Is that about approximate right, the total number of all these 10 budget items? Okay. And just so I perfectly understand that, 2.8 million. Now, some of that's insurance proceeds. I understand that. That 10.8 million is going to come from our reserves.
Correct.
basically a rainy day fund or a savings account,
Correct.
put it in layman's terms. So we have a savings account sitting there. So when these items happen over a fiscal year that we didn't anticipate back in 2017 when we voted on the budget in July of 2017, we didn't anticipate these, but we have that rainy day fund.
Yes, sir.
So that's where we're withdrawing this money.
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I don't think it's nearly that bad, but I appreciate.
No, no,
your point.
but I'm overestimating because I
Right.
think the 2.8 million's off.
But I think
Because
there's very little that you didn't budget. So you've got the fire station at $1.5 million. You've got the rec department building, which actually totaled what, Tommy, about 240,000. You've got the FEMA reimbursement. There's a few tens of thousands that you didn't budget. So most everything else is something that we didn't get our FEMA money as soon as we thought, but there were always things you planned to do, or they had to do with a disaster and an insurance.
Well, let me just, not to put fear in anybody. So this $2.8 million figure that I'm citing is obviously inaccurate. Do you know, because of the insurance proceeds and the FEMA money and all that, do you know exactly how much money we're taking out of our reserves and transferring into our operating budget?
Well, it's hard to say right now because we don't know what that insurance reimbursement's going to be.
Okay.
And
Can you give us an approximation?
it's probably going to be about 2.5 million, somewhere along in there.
Jim, I beg to differ, but it's not.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
on a total this is important to me because this is what I try to do right. And
Yes, sir.
at a $2.8 million, you're talking about $1.5 million fire station. And I don't think anybody would argue we would replace that, okay, period, even if we had to pay it all. You're talking about a certain amount of money on that building that burned at the rec department, and I think that was $230,000. You're talking about a road project that we budgeted and funded and y'all voted on, but we were going to pay it out of SPLOST, but we didn't because our SPLOST are down, so we paid it out of the general fund. So all of these are things that you have already voted to pay for. And so I would say you're down to $20,000 for your accounting help. Even the professional services, which I think most of that was paid on Bankhead, you voted to do, and it
Okay.
got paid out of the admin budget because it was something that you gentlemen wanted, as opposed to Tommy's budget where he would have professional services. And we could book things that way, but we don't do it. We want it booked in the right thing. So, my estimation would be $20,000-$30,000, not $2.8 million. I appreciate you bringing this up because I think it's extremely important that people understand that.
Well, item number 01, that came out of NSP money, didn't it?
No, sir, I think according to the regulations, we had to make that initial property purchase out of the city's general fund. Somebody correct me wrong if I'm wrong on that, but I think that we had to make that initial purchase out of city general fund
Is
money.
that Bristol?
Yeah, that is Bristol.
Yeah.
Bristol and
That
Willie.
wasn't purchased
And then the
with
Alabama
NSP.
Street purchase.
It was purchased with NSP? It wasn't?
It was not NSP,
Okay, that's what
no.
I
We'll
thought.
use NSP to develop it further, but it was not
Yeah.
NSP. I just want to be real clear that the vast, vast majority of this money came before this council. You voted on it. It was the right thing to do. Jim's just cleaning up what pot of money he's paying it out of because of either insurance reimbursements or SPLOST reimbursement from FEMA.
It's purely housekeeping.
Sir?
Basically just purely housekeeping.
Yes, sir. And like on those insurance reimbursements for the cemetery and the recreation building, timing difference. If like on that, if we'd got the cemetery headstones, we got the building replaced all in the current fiscal year, we wouldn't even be discussing this tonight.
More questions, gentlemen? I'd like to make a motion, we approve the amendments. Have a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, then we'll just vote. All in favor of the amendment budget? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jim. Item number 6, 18-19 budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a copy of the proposed FY19 operating budgets for the city, general fund, water fund, sanitation, and special revenue hotel motel fund budget. We're conducting our public hearing tonight. This notice of the public hearing and budget availability was published in the May 22nd edition of the Times-Georgian. We'll start off reviewing the general fund. As your budget notes, the proposed general fund budget totals $26,024,946. That represents an increase of $1,094,625, or a 4.4% increase over the current FY18 budget of $24,930,321. I just wanted to go over a summary analysis of general fund revenues. And the first part of general fund revenues are the taxes. We are forecasting an increase in our tax revenue of all the line items combined for taxes of $535,000. It's a 4% increase in our tax line items, and those total $15,557,800, excuse me. The two or three that I want to detail to you: current ad valorem taxes. We're forecasting an increase of $306,000. It should be noted that we're assuming the current millage rate of 4.60 mills, no increase in that. Sales tax, we're forecasting an increase of $165,000. Beer and wine tax, we're forecasting an increase of $50,000. Insurance premium tax, we're forecasting an increase of $110,000. And so I just wanted to highlight those two or three to show that our city economy is vibrant, we're doing well, and we expect to continue to do well and show improvements next year and the years ahead. There's three legislative developments related to our taxes that I want to just bring to your attention. All of them are positive. House Bill 329 deals with the title ad valorem tax. You've heard me talk about the last couple of budget cycles that this tax that came into being in 2013, each year that passed, the state was getting more of the cut and the local governments were getting less and less. General Assembly tackled this issue. They rewrote this law, and basically now we have a permanent 65-35 split, with us getting the 65%. And so that's a very positive development for local governments. And so that should affect us in a positive manner for years to come. Also, House Bill 61, sales tax accountability. Internet sales made now to consumers in the state of Georgia will be taxable. And they're estimating statewide that this is going to have a $200 million impact. And of course, we don't know how that would affect us individually, but I think it will have a positive effect on us. House Bill 371 relates to sales tax. I think I've told you before that in the past, we could not get any audit information on sales tax returns from individual businesses. Now this allows local governments to request the State Department of Revenue to provide vendor sales tax information, sales tax return, and it helps us to audit local businesses if we feel the need to make sure they're accurately reporting their sales and filing their tax returns in an accurate way. So those are three things that are going to have a positive effect on us. In the license and permits category for general fund, alcohol license, we're forecasting to increase by $35,000. The intergovernmental section of our general fund revenues, we're basically forecasting to stay the same. There's $16,734 decrease, so we're basically unchanged from current year. Our charges for service, we're forecasting an increase of $278,904. That shows the continued use of our recreation department, of our cultural arts department. More and more people are using their services, their facilities, their class offerings. Fines and forfeitures are forecast to remain at the current level of $1.1 million. And so overall revenue increase in the general fund of $1,094,625, 4%. So things look very, very good on that. Moving on to the expenditure side of the general fund budget. The budget for general fund includes a 3% blended cost of living allowance. It's also tied to merit-based increase, employee performance. We had to put an amount in the budget for that. We're still waiting on the salary study and survey, but this is an estimated amount that we've got in the budget for that initiative. Also, the budget includes a 7% estimated increase for group health insurance cost. We will not get that renewal until October, but you know, it could be more, but this is based on our actual experience in past fiscal years. The budget also assumes a 17% increase in property liability insurance. That is a firm amount. And we have, as we've talked about in the budget amendments, we've had a major fire claim, a major tornado claim during the past fiscal year. And so also that combined with new assets that we're adding to the city insurance schedule, we felt like that was a very competitive quote. Our broker, J. Smith Lanier, worked very hard in getting us this quote, and we feel like it's a very competitive quote. The budget also includes 3 firefighter positions added to help maintain our ISO rating for our fire department that we're so very proud of. Capital items included in the general fund. Just wanted to briefly summarize those. $140,000 for a bucket truck engineering department, $30,000 for a pickup truck for our codes department, $175,000 for infrastructure upgrades to our information technology department. Our police department, $251,000. That includes 5 patrol cars, 2 ATVs, and also $110,000 to replace the roof on the public safety building, the building directly adjacent to the building that we're in right now. Our fire department, as we said, the 3 new positions that we're adding, also $47,000 for a staff battalion chief vehicle. Recreation, this was a big thing, but we had to get these things in the budget. This year we've got $530,000 in capital improvements. These include a new roof to the Stallings Center, HVAC replacement to East Carroll, Lakeshore pool roof motor replacement, Lakeshore track resurface, a Greenbelt maintenance vehicle, 72-inch commercial lawnmower, and an athletic field turf mower, $62,000 that had been many years since that had been replaced. I guess, any questions before we move on to the water fund?
I got a quick one.
Yes, sir.
We've got the police patrol cars at 120. Chief, what have we been spending on patrol cars each? About 26 grand, 27? So about 30 each. So that budgeted amount for 120 seems a little low, right? Just not to put you on the spot, just looking at that, I'd like that to be rechecked to make sure we're actually putting in the full amount to be able to get you your 5, you know. And
We'll check that.
Thanks for not being 47 grand for each one.
You know, Jim, I think that was a typo we talked about. I think it was supposed to be 170, not 120, so you're right, and I appreciate you catching that.
I'll check on that, thank you. Check on that, thank you. There are no questions. We'll move on to the water fund. The water fund that you have proposed before you tonight totals $20,358,229. That's an increase of $851,125, a 4.4% increase over the current FY18 budget of $19,558,000. 507-104. The same budget assumptions apply for the cost of living allowances, the group health insurance, the property liability insurance. Those same percentages and increases apply to the water fund that apply to the general fund. I'd like to briefly summarize the capital expenditures for the water fund. For the filter plant, we have $25,000 proposed for a new pickup truck. We have $3.4 million in infrastructure upgrades to include the reservoir project proposed for the water filter plant. Systems upkeep, we have $130,000 for 2 excavators, $12,000 for 2 transport trailers, $35,000 for a 4x4 pickup truck, $10,000 for a pipe boring machine, and $500,000 for water sewer line upgrades and extensions. The wastewater plant, we're proposing $1.3 million for infrastructure upgrades. This includes the completion of the bar screen project that's currently underway, $30,000 for a pickup truck, $150,000 for an electric generator. And moving on down to the facilities maintenance department, they are proposing capital expenditures of $110,000. And this is infrastructure related to the lift stations and the pump stations at Oak Mountain and also the North Side pump station. And that basically completes the water fund capital expenditures.
Jim, if I could, the
Yes, sir.
$3.9 million on the filter plant, about 3 of that is half of the settling pond. And Tony can correct me if I'm wrong. That settling pond, we estimated about a $6 million project. We have to wait on state approval for that, and that particular department, Safe Dams, is notoriously slow. So if they don't approve it this year, we won't start it this year. If they do, we'll get a design. Well, the design will be complete because they have to approve the design. But anyway, we'll bid it out and start it. But that's a project that'll take more than 1 fiscal year to build. And then on the, there are some other water plant upgrades, Tony. I know there's some more base and concrete work. What's some of the other stuff that would be in the balance of that? No, I mean at the plant itself. I know we're putting VFDs on every high service pump, and right. So those are just things we do to, you know, we planned that settling pond for some time. We can afford it. We'd like to do it. It's going to be one of those things that one day we'll have another major drought, and we'll be glad it's there. It adds, I believe, 21 days of additional storage, and in a major drought, that can matter. So, and then the wastewater plant upgrades, again, we hadn't spent any money on that sewer plant in years and years. So Tony just did the grit and grease. Is it complete, or how close is it? It is complete and running, and we call it the headworks. It's the first part of the plant that the wastewater sees when it comes in. That bar screen, I know I've driven some of you down there to your delight to get to see that tasty operation. So anyway, that hadn't been worked on in I don't know how long. That thing went in about 1989. So anyway, any questions on this? Facilities maintenance is our mechanics. I'm very proud of the work they've done. They've rebuilt just about every lift station that has any age on it, and we did the work in-house, and we did, you know, for $150,000 a lift station, we did what I think would be $400,000 or $500,000 if we bid it out. They built the pump station up on Moat Road, Tony and his crews did, and you won't find cities that can do that, that can design that in-house and build that in-house, but, you know, that was this past fiscal year, but I'm very proud of the work they do. This is why this fund has money, is the way they manage these projects, and then that money goes to your general fund and keeps your millage rate down. So I just want to make that point.
Can I ask what size little excavators we're buying for $130,000? What size amount? We gonna get rid of some of the backhoes we got? we're going to be buying those collapsible booms, dig around a hole, or just straight boom? We're going to buy the twisting booms or just the straight booms?
Got a question. The salary study on there, as you guys know, I'm pretty adamant on making sure that we can retain good staff and making sure that we are being competitive in pay with, I know we've struggled with and want to make sure that we're not falling behind with retaining staff to our peer cities and things of that sort. When will that salary study be completed, and what all will it entail?
Faith and I had a teleconference with the gentleman from Archer. I will tell you, we had a hard time finding anybody to do this. The people who do this are very busy. We engaged them, January? Is that when we finally got a commitment, was in January? We thought we would have the study by now. He promises us he'll be done in a couple of weeks. You know, that gives you a couple of weeks before the budget. I don't like pushing it that close. He has compared us to cities in the area, counties in the area, and more importantly to the college, to Southwire, you know, to where we would lose people now. For instance, and I'll pick on Joel, we're not going to lose Joel. We're probably not going to lose him to Southwire. I guess we could, but probably not. It'd be another city that would take him. But Mike Green, you would lose Mike Green to, you know, Southwire or Carl Owens Construction or that sort of thing. So we've tried to use some logic about, or he's tried to use some logic about where we would lose people, or Tommy would go to an engineering firm, that sort of thing. So, but this is a moving target, and Tony said to me today that he has had did you say 41% turnover at the wastewater plant in a year? Okay, and that's just chasing salaries. And it's, you know, we're just on water and wastewater. We're a really good utility and a good place to work, but there's just a lot of work out there and a lot of construction. And, you know, he's trying to hire, we just had a discussion this morning, he's trying to hire an equipment operator for the spray site. And, you know, they can work for a contractor. So we want to have this soon, but it is a moving target. And
I get that. When employment rates are so low, it's harder to get good people in those positions. And I just want to make sure that the people that are here are being paid equitably, and we can actually pull people in, not just to try to throw money at the situation, but making sure people are staying when we really want them to be here. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Moving on to the sanitation fund budget. The proposed FY19 sanitation fund budget is totals $4,680,285. It's actually a decrease of $1,525,233, or 25% from the FY18 budget of $6,205,518. A couple of factors that are because of that decrease. We have a decrease of capital purchases of $501,650. We purchasing a street sweeper and two rear loader garbage trucks this year, and so we will not have that the new year to purchase. And also, we're eliminating the $1 million fund transfer from the sanitation fund to the general fund for paving projects at the recommendation of our auditors. And so those two items are the reason that we had such a large decrease in the operating budget for this fund. There are a few small capital items for the sanitation fund: $35,000 for a new pickup truck, $50,000 for a wood chipper, and $6,000 for a transport trailer. Any questions on the sanitation fund? If not, our final fund that we will summarize tonight is the hotel motel tax fund. That proposed budget totals $812,000. That's completely funded by the 8% hotel motel tax. It funds the tourism initiative, city advertising, public relations, the public branding campaign, and as I said, the 8% hotel tax funds completely this fund, and that is what we're proposing. Tonight, as you know, is the public hearing. No formal action taken. final consideration of the budget will be the July 9th meeting. Any other comments or questions?
Again, Jim, I want to point out, and Mr. Mayor and Councilman, this city has, I just added up, a $21 million reserve balance. We have the lowest millage rate in the area. We have the lowest water and sewer rates, I believe, except Bremen may have one rate up there that's a little smaller. We have the lowest sanitation rates, and we make money on them all, and yet we're in very healthy position, and I echo what all of you said to me. Not Roy said it aloud here, but you've all said it to me that you're going to take care of these employees because they're making us money. What we try to do is pay a little more and work fewer people. That's the best way to manage this kind of organization. And I want to thank the employees because the reason we have that kind of balance is the hard work they do, and I especially want to thank these department heads because they watch us money close. So we are the envy of any city or county in this area, and very thankful for the hard work these employees put in.
Tim, so we have a $21 million reserve. Is that for all three funds total?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then all three budgets seem to total around 66 million. Am I right?
If you say so.
Okay,
I
I'm
added
not.
it up, but if you say so.
Okay.
Just realize some of that, some of those capital projects are huge, and we wouldn't do that every year, and they're spread out over several years, so that can skew it.
Roy, one comment I'd like to make too before I sit down on the vehicles for the police department. Actually, the total that's in the budget is 141, and I think when I drafted the transmittal letter, I just included the cost of the cars and not the ancillary equipment to equip them. So we will make that change before the July meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jim. Ms. Studdard, appointments, Carrollton Center of the Arts.
The final item on your agenda this evening are appointments to the Arts Commission. First off, I wanted to recognize Jill Duncan. She is the current chairman of our Arts Commission. She and these others that I'm about to speak of have worked very hard this year to put together a strategic plan for the Arts Center. They've put together a 3-year plan. It's a good workable plan. It addresses everything from programmatic improvements to facility improvements to increasing volunteerism. And I did want to thank each and every one of these arts commissioners. They are the inaugural commission, for lack of a better word, and they've done a wonderful job along with Tim Chapman, the arts manager. Jackie Fillingham, Linda Fulford, Michelle Morgan, and Deidre Haywood Rouse their terms are all expiring in July 1. And then Miss Dee Dee Murphy had to resign earlier in the year because of her failing health. So at this time, we are asking that you make 5 new appointments to the Arts Commission. The Arts Commission met and reviewed potential candidates that might be beneficial for the commission, and they are recommending the following community members to serve: Ms. Laurie Fleck, Ms. Andrea Chapman, Ms. Marilyn Glass, Ms. Michelle Connolly, and Mr. Clint Samples. These 5 individuals represent community members from the city school system, from the Fulford Foundation, we've also got parents on there, and we've also got representatives from the University of West Georgia. We feel like that these particular candidates are active enough in the community, and they're also active arts patrons in the community already, and we feel like they will serve the commission well and serve this community well. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions? Make a motion, we adopt. Have a second? Any more discussion? All in favor of making these appointments, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. This brings us down to item number 8, the Housing Authority. Chick still here? Chick. I'm sorry, Charles, I'm sorry.
Yes, Chick. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. As you may recall, I think it was in January this year, you guys approved a rezoning for an affordable housing development on 113. Gateway was the name of the group. It was in February, around the same time, that this group approached the Housing Authority requesting we issue bonds to assist with financing the development. In February, the Board of Commissioners for the Housing Authority approved that request, and we were essentially asking for you to allow us to go ahead and issue the bonds. That's kind of the short of it. What we are doing collectively is rubber stamping a loan that the developer can take, $12 million, that is interest-free and tax-free. Now, what we get out of that is we get a property that will be bound to serve affordable needs as it relates to our seniors. So that's the trade-off that we get between the developer and the city. And it'll hopefully help us meet a demand that we have for affordable housing in Carrollton.
Chuck, you want to weigh in on this one?
Sure. As Chick said, this is not, or Charles said, this is not a bond issue by the city. The city's not obligated on the bonds. It is a bond issue by the Housing Authority, but it's a non-recourse bond issue, meaning that the developer of the project is responsible solely for repaying the bond. So even if there was a default, it wouldn't come back to the Housing Authority. These bonds qualify for a tax-exempt status, and the reason it's on the agenda tonight is that the IRS regulations essentially require this to be presented to the local governing authority in order to certify that the public hearing and all of that has occurred. So all you're really being asked to do is to certify that the requirements for the tax-exempt status of the bonds have been met.
And I do believe that you advertised and had your public hearing, everything's
Yes, sir, that's
just
correct.
waiting on me to sign, right?
That's right. Yes, sir.
I wanted to bring this in front of y'all because Chick brought it to me and just said, you can sign this, and I said, no. So I'd like a motion from one of y'all to go ahead with this bond issue for the project on 113.
I move that the mayor has the authority to sign the bond for the Housing Authority.
Sign the certificate.
Sign the certificate.
Have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, sir. I think that wraps us up. Can I have a motion we adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. I have a second. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good night.